So yeah, I would like to start with a quick thank you to all the sponsors, especially Siddharth from Binary Roads, and also all the organizers from the Pune Tech community for this opportunity. Welcome all. Please do stay till the end of the session. There are some exciting prizes to win. So a quick introduction about myself. My name is Bhargav Reddy Nutanakalava. I'm a solution architect at TCS. Um, I am an advocate of Power Platform. Personally, I'm a poet and also a public speaker. I currently work as a solution architect at TCS with over about 15 years of experience and multiple certifications on SharePoint, Power Platform, and 365 as well as Azure. I'm part of the special squad within TCS called TCS Rapid Apps Automation Team, which specializes in delivering intelligent workplace solutions. So I'll not go ahead with the overhead of again explaining what Copilot is. I think Gomati and other co-speakers did a very good job of explaining all the concepts pertaining to Copilot. I'll just directly go into some of the prerequisites that might be required for you to get kick-started and enable this in your environments and experience it for yourselves. So the pretty much the prerequisites for Copilot are in order to have this, it is currently limited to environments within the United States region, and your browser settings must be set to the US English language. So this is a bit of a detailed slide. This is where I wanted to explain about the modes of using Copilot in Power Pages, right? So since morning you have seen, Copilot's usage within platforms such as Power Automate, Power Apps, and as well as Power Pages. But Power Pages, whatever you saw was more from the design studio, right? So Copilot is like a chatbot kind of a window. It allows you to taking certain keywords with natural language, and it uses that particular keywords to process that particular information and provide results on the fly to you. So all those capabilities are pretty much what you see here as part of the Power Pages standard features that you saw. But today, what I would like to showcase a bit, and I think the follow-up session with my co-speaker Kirti as well will be highlighting more on the custom aspects pertaining to how to go ahead and generate certain JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and include them into your custom, components that you would like to develop, right? So the more the aspects that we will discuss more is pertaining to the right part here, which is more towards the pro-code approach. Although the examples that we discuss could be quite basic, you can use the principles that we apply here and generate more complex components as well. So Power Pages, where does it actually today Power Pages is enabled for Fusion teams, right? It's available from a full stack web developer to a business user. Everybody has a role to play, including site administrators and IT professionals. But overall, if you look at it, today the line between the usage of Copilot is thin, is quite thin, right? So everybody within the Fusion team has access to Copilot. But what are those different things that you could do when it comes to using Copilot? So from the design studio, users such as the business users, IT professionals, or content authors or content managers, generally in enterprises and organizations who have access to the design studio, can quickly use the Copilot features from the browser itself in order to be able to generate your quick content pages. For example, if I just say I can go to Copilot and what we've seen in samples in the morning as well, I could create a basic form, I could add a particular image, or add dynamic content. I could refine the content, rewrite the content. I could also do quite a few iterations to make that particular content align to what my needs are. So that being said, what are the capabilities that it kind of provides developers? So that's what we will kind of look at today. Just a quick note, what you would require is to, in order to experience this for yourselves, you need an E5 trial, E3 or an E5 trial account, enable the Power Platform Community Developer Plan, work with the database environment, and always recommend to create solution for all your components. That's about pertaining more on the site level. And from extensibility perspective, you like to extend your Power Pages site, I would rely upon a Visual Studio Code with certain support from Windows PowerShell or Platform Tools extension, which is quite an important extension that allows you to work with Copilot as well. And the Power Platform CLI, in order to be able to download all the artifacts and components pertaining to your portal onto your Visual Studio Code and use it for your ALM processes, such as pushing things into source code and also getting things working from the CI and CD perspective. So all of that can be enabled using that. And the last part is a community tool like an XRM toolbox, also with certain helper tools which kind of help you enhance and speed up your process in terms of your development. So these are some quick tips that I would already probably give to somebody who's starting it. But if you're really a pro developer and you're somebody who's already accustomed to it, then probably some of this you already know. Some of the good to know aspects of the AI generated code. So what are those particular aspects? So currently it does not support non-English language inputs, right? So whatever we need to generate, or could be content or it could be code, we need to ensure that the content or the query that we post to Copilot has to be in an English language. And the feature is preview to United States region itself. We also have a limit of the number of tokens allowed in a query and response. So like you cannot have a query which can cross about 250 characters, and there are certain limitations pertaining to the response as well, especially when you're querying enterprise level data. I think the limitation is that you cannot have more than 1,000 records that you're going to return and work with. So that data set is also quite limited there. So that being said, the generated code sometimes might not have some of the table names correct, and this is actually Copilot is not doing everything for you. It just provides you the required wrappers, all the skeleton, a bit of the muscle, and then all you need is you need to apply your own thought process, unleash your creativity, unlock a bit of the productivity aspects as well in order to beautify those pages, make those cosmetic changes, and also ensure your business logic is dynamic in nature, and develop more dynamic components or web components on the Power Pages side. Also, in order for you to generate accurate code, you need to ensure that when you're working with a particular file, if you have the particular file open, Copilot takes the reference of the particular file open. Like it could be a HTML file that you're opening from a web template folder within your Visual Studio solution, or it could be a basic JavaScript file that you're open from a basic form. So it has that particular context of what is the file that is open in Visual Studio in order for it to generate more accurate code. So that's a good and important tip for you to remember. So say suppose you're working on a web template and you need to generate certain HTML code along with Liquid, then I would say that you keep the web template HTML file open on Visual Studio, and then you provide the required instructions to say, let's say about a query could be like a create a web template using HTML Liquid code in order to display the top 10 records from a context table. So this could be one of the queries. So we'll look into that more on the practical aspect and how Copilot responds with the code aspects and how you can actually beautify that aspect. I would recommend everybody to start using the thumbs up and thumbs down feature. Sometimes it becomes a bit difficult for us to go ahead and do that for all positive and negative aspects as well in terms of our responses that we receive. But as and when we keep doing that, I think the intention behind for that feature to exist is for Microsoft to improvise Copilot and ensure the responses are quite near to the queries that people are posting, and understanding of the LLMs behind all the machine ML aspects as well behind working tirelessly in order to respond with the right response can do it appropriately. And what I've observed is, as apart from generating good content, which you can go through multiple iterations of modifications and stuff, it also provides good code responses for in Visual Studio Code using for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and a bit of the Liquid template language, which is more aligned to the Power Pages world, right? So this is pretty much what I wanted to cover in terms of the slides. I would want to keep it more on the demo aspects. So let's work with the Copilot using Visual Studio Code and generate some content in code. I'll just take a quick pause pertaining to the slides because I'm not coming back again. Anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, so I think that's clear. Then let's move ahead. So the first thing I would do is I would probably say the first thing is, apart from the prerequisites that we saw, I would go to Visual Studio Code, and I have installed the user setup. Visual Studio Code is available in two setups. One is the system setup and the user setup. I would probably go ahead with the user setup because it's quite faster, and things get loaded much easier in the background, and it doesn't require certain permissions to access the files in directories, because you're running on the user setup and not on the system setup. So things can get easily installed, and you can work with Visual Studio Code. So it's also recommended by Microsoft as some of the default installation, tips. So I would go ahead and install the Visual Studio Code the user setup from the download site, and using Power Platform site, one must be aware, if we had the proper approach or aware already, you can download the portal's content. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly show a portal that I have developed here. So I have the Power Pages Design Studio open here, and I'm just going to go to this particular site, which I have. The home page is pretty much plain vanilla image text with a bit of the video URLs being linked here. So this is a test site that I've created with quite a few concepts that I've imbibed. Each of the concepts pertaining to Power Pages. So I have quite a lot of web templates created in the background that are running certain operations. So I can just probably quickly call the dynamics carousel one, which kind of showcases an image carousel, which accesses certain records from the Dataverse table, and it slides dynamically. So this is one particular component that I had delivered. So similarly, like that, quite a few components. But what I did this morning is I developed something called a page called Copilot. So if you look at this is actually a page, basic content page, but I did not generate this. So you can pretty much see that Copilot has. I asked Copilot with a basic query to generate a poem for me on Copilot in itself, right? So it was quite intelligent to do that for me. So I can show you quickly how that was done. Also, before that, I'll just showcase for the best interest of people who are not already aware. There is a command using the Power Platform CLI in order to download your particular portal with all the required folder structure onto Visual Studio. So what you would do is, if I was a novice or somebody who's starting fresh, I would just go to PA portal, PSC PA portal, and then I could also use help to list down all the commands. But since I know that I want a list of all the portals, I would just do that, and it would connect to my existing Dataverse connection, which I've added here, already available. I guess somewhere here. Yes, so here I have a connection already to my Dataverse URL, which has been established using the pack CLI commands for authentication. And then that kind of already, since the connection is established, it kind of lists down all my sites along with the friendly names, along with the website IDs. So what I am going to do is I have my website ID known for my site, which I just showcased to you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that website ID, and I'm going to download the latest version of the code. Just give it a minute. It takes about close to about 20 to 30 seconds only in order to get all the sites. So as you can see, since Power Pages was built on the ADX Studio, and it was acquired into the Dynamics 365 fold by Microsoft, and then it was kind of something that it exposed to the Power Platform world as well which was earlier called as Power Apps portals. And then last year, it kind of realized that there is a larger potential apart from just having them as CRM portals and Power Apps portals, and it kind of made it more like a standalone service within or vertical within Power Pages. So as you can see, it has used I mean its particular process to bring in all the particular data that you see as part of the portal management. Not everything that you can do here or add entries. I'm still not comfortable working with some of these particular available options from Visual Studio Code, and I tend to go back to the portal management in itself. But yeah, I would recommend you to explore these particular options that we have in terms of the some of the technical aspects pertaining to adding these web templates directly from from the Visual Studio Code itself. I just observed that web templates can be added directly. You can go to this option and then you can click on a new web template, and then it kind of creates that particular web template for you. So let's go ahead and quickly do our first prompt. So what you can do is once you install the latest version of the extensions called uh, Power Platform Tools, which is this, you would have, and reload Visual Studio, you would have a pop-up to the right here, which says, do you want to install or try Copilot for Power Pages? So that is the pop-up that you will get. And then you click on try Copilot for Power Pages, and then it will automatically install that particular extension for us. And I think it's already installed in my case. I'm just going to go here and just a second. I'm just going to go and restart this process. Just give me a moment. Yeah. So I'm going to neglect this. I'm not sure what this error means. Probably I'll try to fix it later, but I know that for sure from my notifications that, especially what I see into the left here onto the screen, Copilot in Power Pages here, I am able to definitely see the Copilot in Power Pages preview option. So what I'm going to show here is the first option that you see here is basically called clear conversation. If you have already started interacting with Copilot and you have certain queries which you have already listed and you want to clear it, clear conversation is a good option here, and you want to restart again. Um, it quite clearly describes itself, saying that in your own words, describe what you need. You can get help with writing code for Power Pages sites in HTML, CSS, and JS languages. So it's kind of already telling you to limit your queries pertaining to that. And since you're working with Power Pages, it's more limited to that. But I've seen that it kind of returns results a bit beyond as well. So let's look at the first query that we wanted to check. I wanted to use this expression. So let's say we will first start with certain negation scenarios. So we discussed, right? So let's say I would want to generate Python code for displaying the top Fibonacci series of numbers. Would Copilot be able to do that? Just give it a second, we'll see. So as you can see, it's not able to relate the query, and since it is asking for more like a Python code, it is not able to execute, and it's not able to return. Let's say we'll give it another negation scenario, which I already know I've tried. I'll say provide me C# code to display Fibonacci numbers until 100. Sorry, and I'm sure this will not work, right? But if I say I would require JavaScript code with some regular expression to validate an email column available in, let's say, an accounts table in Dataverse or a context table in Dataverse. Copy this query and then say generate JavaScript code with a regular expression to validate an email column in context database table. And there you go. So now you have the basic wrapper JavaScript code that you can actually utilize in order to validate your certain fields or columns that you have within your basic forms. So what I would do is I would probably go here, and then let's say I'm just choosing a random basic form that I have. It might not really suit the scenario, but I'm just going to showcase how you can actually insert that. So now you can go back to Copilot here, and then all you have to do is either you can copy the code that it has generated to a clipboard, or you could use the direct option, which is to insert the code using the editor. So I'm just going to use this, and then that's it. And once you save this, you can upload upload. You can use the paxcli command to upload the portal in order to view your changes or test your changes. Right? But if it is basic HTML or content-based changes, you have an option to view those particular changes within Visual Studio itself. I'm not going to save that. I'm just going to go ahead and move to the next scenario, which is let's go ahead and try to provide some positive scenarios in terms of content generation to Copilot and see how it behaves. So like I showed you a particular page, I'm going to probably retry it. Yeah, so let's say I want to see with the same query which I passed earlier, whether it could generate the same poem or it would try to use a bit more creativity and give me a new response. But let's try to compare that and go back. Say, can you write me a poem using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on the topic Copilot? Yeah, so I think it has pretty much um, generate the same set of lines which it had done earlier. And if I need to improvise, I can go ahead and I can do a thumbs up. So this is what we already discussed as an important good to know point. I would say that thumbs down, and I would say this was generated already with the same query earlier. This is what I was trying to mention, that if you feel that there is some feedback that needs to be passed on, if you feel that there is repetition, if you see something is being plagiarized or something is not according to your needs, you could go back, provide that feedback so that when you pass the query next time, probably Copilot can improve itself. So let's go ahead and clear the conversation and restart again and pass the same query. Yeah, so I think it is not improvising it pretty much. It's all again kind of showcasing the same thing. So I think I hopefully feel that in future the content generation will be much better from the Visual Studio Code. Now let's say I will go for another scenario which says that I want to generate a web page to display a poem by some author, and I'm just going to provide the title and the author, sorry, the poet's name, and it should be able to generate my HTML. I'm going to say generate HTML for a web page to display the poem Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And let's see what it does. Yeah, it's it's pretty much done a very good job. And as you can see, this time what it has done is it has provided us the div and the class and the containers pretty much in alignment to how you would want to embed your HTML sections within Power Pages, within your Power Pages web templates or HTML files. So what I'm going to do is, I like this. I'm just going to showcase a quick example of how you can actually change content from Visual Studio Code, upload that, and then how the changes can reflect on the site as well. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to bring up one of my existing web templates just to save some time instead of creating a new one. So I'm going to go here to my existing template here. And I know that this is the code that pretty much needs some tweaks. And I'm just not going to replace everything. I know that this is the point that I have and I want to target removing that. So I go back to here and I'll say, I'm just going to take this paragraph and title and add it. For somebody who's starting fresh and who has not created a web template earlier, they would want to use the additional sections here, which along with the wrapper here, or I would probably go back and say, let's say if I do a insert code, what would happen? So here, if you see what has happened is I didn't want this repetition because I already have a row section, block layout and container here added. So I wanted to avoid that. But yeah, nevertheless, if you are somebody who's starting fresh, you can go ahead, remove this and again do this. And it still means the same, right? So I'm going to save this file and I'm going to upload the changes that we have done here into the site. And in order to do that, I have my command, which is pack portal upload hyphen twice path, and I provide the path of my downloaded folder. So it gives you a warning when you're updating public sites. So just to be aware that the changes will be reflected to everybody. When you're doing such changes, it's good to put your Power Pages site on private mode and ensure that you're working on, ensure that certain pages that you're working on are not accessible to everybody on everybody who has access to the portal. And with that site's visibility settings, you can pretty much restrict access to the pages. And then, as you see, it's quite intelligent that, since I made only a change to a web template, it directly was able to understand that the changes happened only to the web template, and only that record and table was updated in the Dataverse portal management. So I will just go back to my site here, and I will have to do a synchronization on my Power Pages Design Studio in order for it to get all the latest changes. Yes, and as you see earlier, what was available here was the poem on Copilot, and that has pretty much changed here. And you can preview it, and the page will get reflected, right? So now I could probably have a request from a content author, a content manager who says that, hey, I don't see an image placeholder. So now you need to generate that, and you can go back to Copilot and you can just say generate with an image placeholder, which is an additional keyword that you can add. So what I did to the previous text is then generate HTML for a web page with an image placeholder to display the poem road not taken by Robert Frost. That's it, and it's able to do that. Not only that, pertaining to content, it can also do things pertaining to the layout, right, and things pertaining to the CSS, right? So let's say I imagine that I would want three sections to be displayed on my Power Page, and I just need the HTML pertaining to that. I could go and post this particular query which says generate HTML to display to-it content in three sections on a Power Page. And in order to improvise that, as you see, it has been able to generate the HTML, but when it comes to the CSS, can somebody identify what is wrong with this particular uh, code that it has generated? This very basic error that it was not able to complete, or there is a very basic completion aspect that it is missing. Can anybody can take the question? If you know the answer, please raise your hand. Feel free to participate. I mean, you can be wrong as well. It doesn't matter. Anybody wants to take a shot? Okay, so I will go ahead. I can explain that, no problem. So my intention was to generate HTML to display fluid content in 3 sections on a Power Page. But if you look at it, the class that it has, the Bootstrap class that it has assigned to the div is just container and it is not fluid in nature. And suppose you would want to have a fluid row as well, you would need that additional uh, attribute added to the particular class. It's called row hyphen field or container hyphen field. So in order to change that, you can quickly make changes to your prompt as well, and then it will generate the latest code for you. I just modified the query to say generate HTML to display content in 3 fluid bootstrap sections on a Power Page, and that's it. It will be able to generate the required section. So you can work with pretty much content, and you can also work in generating layouts according to your needs, and then uh, develop intelligent components. The next is I am going to need to develop a liquid code. So, and I need to access certain records from a table in Dataverse and display that as a bootstrap file cards. Is that possible? So let's say I am going to this query. I will Copilot get. So I'm saying provide me HTML liquid template language to display 10 top 10 jobs from jobs Dataverse table as bootstrap file cards. And if you look at it, pretty much has been able to generate a wrapper. And I look at it as subtraction of a bit of logic from here. I would probably try to remove some of this particular fetch logic from this fetch XML, whatever you see here, into probably the root of my web template, and then I would have the below part of the HTML and then the logic for the for loop. Probably I can show one example of an existing template where let's look at the dynamics carousel example, and you would understand what I mean. So I would probably first do all my fetch activities here, and use the same code that you have here, but just make some basic modifications. So like I mentioned, it is not going to give you exactly what you need. So that's first thing that you would want to remember. It needs proper prompts or queries in order to be able to generate what you need. And sometimes you might get about 85%, 90% of the code right, and then you need to make about 10% of the change. So that's where the productivity or the time saving happens in for especially developers or designers who are actually working with Visual Studio Code. So I am also going to additionally say that I want to create a web template for Power Pages, and I want to return something similar like contact top 10 active contacts or something like that. So let me just post this query and see how it reacts. It says I want to create a web template. So since it kind of expects a web template to be open for it to generate context-based information, if you look at it, we have opened a web template already. So it can pretty much generate the required data. And now if you see, it has become so intelligent. I mean, the response has become so intelligent that it has the ability to separate the information pertaining to the HTML, the JS, and the CSS code that that particular implementation might require. So this is definitely going to save time for somebody who wants to get acclimatized with a new technology, or even for somebody who's starting out fresh within the IT world. It definitely will improvise the way they look at the overall process to develop certain components. So they might be missing how they need to think from the perspective of JS, or how they might be have to thinking from combining all the techniques between CSS, HTML, and JavaScript or jQuery together, put together to provide a intelligent solution. So that's how I kind of look at it. So the next example that I would like to showcase is whether Copilot has the ability to get inspired from something. So I would want to go and say, sorry, I have Google News here, and I say, can Google, can it get inspired and generate a layout based on this particular, you know, URL? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, provide me HTML, CSS, jQuery, and JavaScript, whatever I feel that could be used under the page or as reference for creating a web page inspired by the layout of Google News. And if you see, it has been able to produce some basic HTML, but not accurately with all the content that might be required. But it's just the basic set of navigation tabs or tags that it had, and then the main content, it just has placeholders here. So it's pretty much the boiler template code that it can produce and get inspired from. But I have also observed that if you can make your queries a bit more specific, and let's say yesterday I was working on some of the samples and I saw, let's say, how do I ask Copilot to get inspired from building something pertaining to a stock chart. So I have a stock chart here from a code pen here, and it has a basic set of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that was pretty much listed down in this article. So there is something called anychart.com. I had never heard of it till yesterday. But then I said, okay, let me see if there is some amount of content, there is some amount of JavaScript that they're talking about on this page. It kind of talks about making an HTML, adding certain required scripts for successful execution of logic. It has some access to some CSV data or basically preparation of data, and is also writing the necessary JavaScript code to achieve the required business functionality. So I'm not going to go deep dive into each of these particular elements and explore what's going to really happen, or probably even spend time creating the stock chart. But I just want to see if Copilot can generate something that is inspired by this chart, inspired by this stock chart JS, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, provide me HTML, CSS, JavaScript code to display stock chart inspired by the article, right? It's taking a bit of time to work in the background, but I think it should respond pretty soon. Yeah. So if you look at this, it has been able to generate quite a good example of integrating something that you can readily integrate and create a web template out of it. So if I was somebody who's developing and I didn't know anything about StockJet and I needed some inspiration and I like that particular chart, I just used this Copilot. It would give me a subset of, it would give me the information in the way that we could probably convert it into a web template, right? So if you look at it, all the basic HTML is available here. I'm just going to make this a bit big because I think the response is bigger as well. But yeah, so it says it requires this anychart bundle.min.js. I personally feel that it could have multiple more dependencies just apart from the bundle.min.js, because I see that the article kind of from the JS perspective has quite a lot of these links towards many script resources that could be needed. Yeah, but that's something that if you're a pro developer, you would decide whether you would want to include all of this and whether or whatever Copilot has generated here is sufficient enough, right? And then if you look at it from the original example, it was having access to a CSV file uh, in the JavaScript. If you see, it was loading this particular CSV file at runtime. I'm just going to quickly open for your reference. And if you see, there is quite a lot of records that it had access to in the background to work with in order to be able to generate that particular chart. But Copilot is not providing us access to that file. Instead, it just took reference from that particular file and has created a dummy data set for us, more like a synthetic data set that it generated by itself, which is also quite intelligent in nature. And it has all the required JavaScript as well that it needs to be available in order to, quickly generate that particular chart or draw that particular chart. And I'm not going to spend time here trying to explain how to create a web template out of this. I'm kind of taking that as you already understand how to do it. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase how you can get inspired and use certain sections of, the web as well to get inspired to generate your particular code, right? And other basic queries like generating jQuery or JavaScript code or Bootstrap 5 elements is pretty much doing a very good job. One last prompt that I will, probably make before I just pause for questions. Provide me jQuery or JavaScript code to display Fibonacci numbers until 100. Now I feel it should provide some JavaScript, because earlier when I was prompting, I was saying, give me Python code or C# code. It was not able to. But now since I said, give me jQuery or JavaScript code, and since it understands that much better, it was able to provide the required function. Yeah. So I think I've pretty much reached the end of my demo as well, and just pause for questions.